So you memorize, what could I say that would make it not worse and maybe better? And what I say is, get from this moment to the next one. At that moment, say yes. Now, if later you got to modify that, we'll get to that next. But say that which doesn't make it worse and make things better. So when you think about that, wherever you go, whatever happens, my duty is to not make it worse, try to make it better. It reframes the question. It doesn't give you the answer, but it reframes the question. Now, at a deeper level, when you look at what your duties are, then it gets more complex, and we've talked about that, and I'll just summarize a little bit. We definitely have duties to other people, and our basic duty to other people is not to cause them unnecessary intentional harm. So if you just want to know, well, what are my duties? Do not cause people unnecessary intentional harm. Benefit the worthy when possible. That's a good thumbnail definition. If you want to know what are my duties, do not intentionally cause unnecessary harm. Secondly, benefit the worthy when possible. And then, of course, you have to decide who's worthy. And you typically starts pretty close to home and, the people you identify with and the groups that you like and so forth. But in general, we have a duty to benefit the worthy. Okay? So in our tradition, by the way, we have a long tradition of tzedakah, which is righteous giving. So if you have the ability and you see that there are worthy people or institutions around you, you actually have an obligation. We have a duty to help out. So don't cause harm, unnecessary, intentional, and benefit the worthy when possible. Okay. Now, just the third level. The third level is confusions about duty. There are basically two types. One type is the default guilt type that says, I owe, I owe, I owe. I'm always doing things for other people. It strings me out, and I start to get resentful about what everybody's asking of me. That's the guilt type. And then they have the aggressive type, I call the obligators with an O, who basically thinks everybody owes them. Now, these are not moral deficiencies. I actually think they're genetic. I think genetically, some people are more built in given situations to focus on how they should make the environment safe for them by telling other people what to do. It's not bad. It just is. And there's other people, the way they control their environment is to appease and please those who are demanding of them. Again, it's not a moral deficiency. It's not bad character. It's just probably the way your inner life operates at a default level. And by the way, this can change in different contexts. In one context, you're the aggressor. In one context, you're the pleaser. The main thing is know yourself. Know who you are, know what your tendency is, and just know yourself to say this. The fact that I feel I'm supposed to doesn't mean I'm supposed to. So your feelings do not define your duty. Your feelings do not define your duty. You have to know that. Nor do your feelings define the duties of other people. The fact that you feel they owe you doesn't mean they do. The fact that you feel they should do what you're asking them doesn't mean that they do. So ultimately, duty is a rational activity. And we're moving into classical Greek and Jewish sources on the nature of the inner life of human activity, which is acting according to the rational principle. So we say this in spiritual Jewish language. We all have a nefesh behemit, you might say the ego self, and the nefesh elohit, or the divine self. Now, part of the divine self is the capacity for rationality. If you want to read on that, just study Maimonides, who's a careful student of Aristotle. So when you think about this, I'm more or less dividing things into the classic Maimonidean, Platonic, Aristotelian scheme of what I call the ego self, sometimes called the animal self. Animal meaning it's instinctive like an animal. Animals don't reflect, they just more act on instinct and habit. But we have a side like that too, called the ego self. So I like to call it the ego self, because I don't want to imply that it's animalistic. It's just what we're trained to do, sometimes by nature and sometimes just by living life at a certain number of years. So your ego self says one thing, but the rational faculty in the higher self says, wait a minute, I know I default to guilt, so let me stop that. Or I know I fault to being too demanding and overbearing, so let me control that. So once you have self-knowledge, you say to yourself, I won't trust my feelings, I will engage my rational capacity into higher self. And from that, I can kind of figure out what my duty is. So doing your duty, you take a couple of premises. Don't make things worse. Make things better with possible. Don't harm intentionally and unnecessarily. Benefit the worthy. Okay? It gives you a little bit to go on. And have enough capacity for self-examination that you don't tend toward your faults.
Oh, say Shabbat.